All right, hello everyone. It is Tuesday, February 9th, and we have entered our second week. We have finished out our first round of assignments. On Sunday, you turned in week one submissions. That included your first game composition and your first production technique and technical assignment. So I am working through all of the grades on my end. I hope to start out with the production techniques and the technical assignments, get those back to you. Uh, Sound cut out. I'm getting broadcast. Wow, what is going on there? Hold on. Let's see. Okay. Did it just switch on me? Why did my audio input in GoTo Training switch? I didn't tell you to do that. Okay. Let's try that again. So on Sunday, you turned in your first round of assignments. That included your game composition for 2D platformer, your production technique, which is the looping assignment, and your technical assignment, which is delivery of all of the files in the proper format. So I'm working through all of the grades on those. I hope to have the technical assignment and production technique back to you by today, and then work through the game compositions. But we had a great submission for the peer review, meaning that a lot of people submitted, so that gives us a lot to talk about today. So in the second half of today, we are going to go ahead and talk about the game compositions. Actually, let's see if I can get some of this stuff. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3. We got all of our main loops. We've got all of our intros and endings. Get all those and these and these and these, and that looks like 3 main loops, and we'll probably tidy that up. And watch Chris click on a whole bunch of little blocks here. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. These are 3 intros, 3 endings, and 3 main loops. Get those separated out. If something happened here, I'll fix it when we actually go through them. But anyway, we have some good submissions, a good number of them to listen to today. So in the second half of our session, we will talk about 2D platformer and your first submissions overall. But starting out, we will discuss our new round of assignments for week 2. So you've turned everything in for week 1. I'm going to get the grades back to you, and then by the end of this week, along with your week 2 assignments, you will have the opportunity to do revisions on all of those. You're going to take the grade sheets, the comments and feedback, and make any of the changes and create not only a better grade, but a better project overall. So the production technique and the technical assignment are a bit more technical and cut and dry. So those are easy things overall to fix once the issues are pointed out. Then the game compositions also have a technical element of naming and formatting and looping and the overall mix. But there's also the creative aspect of your composition, the instrumentation, your use of melody and harmony and rhythm, and the overall theme of how it fits for the game. So we will be talking about all of those different aspects, and then you'll have the opportunity to make those changes by the end of the week on Sunday. So that's pretty much where we are at with wrapping up week 1. And then moving on to week 2, once you do the first round of revisions, that kind of is the overall flow through the rest of the month. Each week, you will have a new round of assignments that are due on Sunday, and the revision for the previous round of assignments is also due that Sunday. And that will keep us on task all the way through the end of the month. So let's get into the week 2 assignments. Let's do our weekly poll here in the chat. Has everyone, number one, taken the opportunity to download all of the assignments, the game composition, the production technique, and the technical assignment? And on top of that, have you played the game? Our new game this week is called Angry Bots. Hopefully you've checked out all of the material. We're going to be talking about the game here, and let me take a chance. We got a yes, and getting ready to, and definitely take the opportunity to check everything out. Of course, we will be talking about the approach to the music and how it's built, the different types of files. I got a couple of demos here. So we've got the full package to check everything out. So our game this week is called Angry Bots, and it is made by Unity Games in the Unity game engine. Of course, towards the end of the month, as we get into more of the technology and the software, we'll be talking about game engines and the Unreal Engine and the Unity Engine, which are kind of like saying Pro Tools and Logic. They're some of the main tools that are used to make games in the industry. And they are free tools and freely available. And so this game, Angry Bots, is a demo that is made to show off the technology for the game engine. And it's available, well, it's a Mac game, and it's also available on iOS and Android stores. And it's just kind of a test of how a game might look and how it might work. And it allows you to tear it apart and check out how everything works in the insides. And of course, for our purposes, it gives us a really cool showcase to show off your music and your sound effects. Your technical assignment for the next 2 weeks will be creating all of the sound effects for all of the games, right along with your music compositions. So last week you did the composition for 2D platformer, and this week you're going to be creating all of the sound effects for it. And this week you'll be doing all of the composition for Angry Bots, and next week you will be doing all of the sound effects, along with the revisions and updating your compositions. And by the end of the month, you'll have fully working, complete projects where the audio and music is all your own. So here in the chat, Edward, Unity is actually a lot of fun to work with and not as complex as you might think. There's often the first stun, or the stunning factor when you first open it up and you're like, whoa, what is all of this stuff? Let me just set this to loop here. What is all of these knobs and buttons and sliders? It's like the first time you ever opened up a reverb plugin, and there's all of this stuff going on in it, and it sounds really cool, and you have no clue what's going on in it, but you work with it, and you tweak it out, and you mess with things, and you do right things, and you screw other things up, and you figure out through trial and error what works best. And so these game systems are very possible to understand and to get a feel of how all of the technology works. Mark, who gave the emotion chip to these bots? We'll talk about the games and what they're about. They're obviously really ticked off that you are coming and infiltrating their base. Of course, you have a big machine gun to shoot at them, so I would be pretty ticked off at that also. The robots definitely have it out for you. Edward, would it be a good idea not only to learn about using middleware, but implementing audio through the Unity engine? Yes, it is kind of like one and the same. Sort of. At least the process is goes between all of that. When we talk about audio middleware and we talk about game engines this month, I kind of relate it to your DAW and plugins. It's kind of like, is it cool to learn about plugins if we're learning about our DAW? Absolutely. They kind of go together. So audio middleware and the game engine, like the Unity game engine or the Unreal game engine, is very handy tools to understand and if not being able to master every in and out of it, it's understanding how the process works and how your audio actually works in the game. So, the game this week, the final result of what you are turning in and what you are submitting is a series of WAV files, and those WAV files make up the music that is the soundtrack for the game. So just like last week, you turned in 9 files where they were intro, main loop, and ending, 3 variations of each one of them. The music is going to be created and built specifically for the game, but this game doesn't rely on the concept of intros, loops, and endings, which can be one common approach. This game deals with the idea of ambient and action music, or ambient and action cues. Another way of thinking about this, it's also known as battle and exploration, where for a long period of time in lots of video games, the player can just be wandering around either aimlessly or they're intentionally going from one place to the next. And they are not hearing much during certain parts of the game where you're trying to figure out what to do next and where you are and where you're going. So you are exploring around and you hear footsteps, you hear maybe some Foley, you hear your character breathing, there's ambiences around, and maybe kind of a light underscore piece of music, if there's even music at all. And these period of ambient or exploration is a portion of the game, and then you turn around the corner or you go into the next area or you find the secret castle or you explore a new dungeon or something like that, and there's enemies in there, and a lot of the objectives of a game are it's you versus the bad guy, and so you are going to experience periods of exploration and periods of battling. You're going to experience periods of ambient or action. And so we have different WAV files that make up ambient and action music. Nope, that's the review. Where's my other session? How about this? There we go. So we'll listen to some of these examples here in a little bit, but you have an ambient file. You have 3 different action files or cues. These relate to the 3 different types of robots that you'll encounter through the game. And you also have 3 stinger files. We'll talk about stingers and what they do for us. But a total of 7 files for this composition, and they're mainly broken out into ambient and action. The stingers are really kind of short impacts that are going to help us go back and forth between ambient and action, but this is one of the core ideas of how do we transition and go back and forth between action and ambient? How does the game know what's going on and which file to play? How does it know when to play ambient, and how does it know when to switch over to action? And then how does it know which robot action to play, and all of those sorts of things. What happens while the file is playing, while the music is playing, is really up to the composer and what they want the music to sound like in either ambient or action. But the real challenge of music in a video game is how do you move between multiple pieces of music? We've already said that the music for a video game is not just one long file playing from the beginning to the end of the game. When you watch a movie, you watch a 2 hour long movie, there is literally a 2 hour long audio file that plays right along with the video that you watch. For games, there is not a 2 hour long file or a 10 hour long or a 100 hour long file for however long you end up playing a video game. It ends up being lots of little files that are put together and rearranged. So while the music is playing, the computer is really not doing all of that much. It's just playing back the audio file, and that's the composer has really control over what that music's supposed to sound like. But moving between ambient and action and transitioning between multiple different files, there's lots of different approaches to this. And actually, there's not just one overall approach that works for all games. Every game has a unique approach to how the music switches and transitions and what it relies on overall. So we saw in our first game, one of the a very common concept is intros, main loops, and endings. So we're going to talk about how ambient and action work. So ambient, the first fact about this is if nothing else is going on, you are hearing the ambient music. When the game starts playing, when you first play the game, it starts right here. The ambient music starts playing, and the ambient file, the ambient cue file that you will be creating, is around a minute long. 60 seconds, it's really 60 seconds to 2 minutes, but 2 minutes probably gets a little bit long overall, so 60 seconds to 90 seconds, somewhere in there. And the game kind of always defaults back to ambient. So if I stood here for an inordinate or infinite amount of time, then you would just hear that 60-second loop go round and around and around. That's why the ambient cue needs to be longer. It's longer than our 8-bar loops that we were doing last round or last week. It's longer than there are 8 bars for the action cues this week, because you kind of rely on it a lot more. There are probably more periods of ambient music or exploration than there is the battle. If we notice here, one of these robots comes out and zaps you, and you'll notice that it really doesn't take all that long. It takes a few shots before that robot blows up. So you're not hearing the action music for all that long before it will eventually transition back to ambient. So let's talk about the overall style and musical approach and instrumentation and how you might want to approach this. So Angry Bots is much more darker and grittier kind of game, certainly than last week. It's probably meant for more of an adult audience, and it's got robots and explosions and guns and all sorts of fun and interesting things for music and sound design. So the game itself is a more modern type of musical score. It's a more modern type of production. So different styles like certainly electronic music works very well for this, epic orchestral or metal, something typically faster and strong and intense and epic, and you really want to feel like you're battling with these robots, and they're after you, they're shooting lasers and missiles at you, and so nothing slow and easy and laid back and groovy and in the pocket where you kind of want to hang out and have a beer with the robots or just kind of be friends with them or anything. You want in your face, up tempo, on top of the beat, loud, fast, strong kind of musical approach. And so that is typically synths and drum machines work well for this. And if you're using electronic music sources, that's excellent. But get it all out of your system, right? Synths and plugins and effects processing and all that sort of stuff. All of the tricks and tools that you can use with more modern production styles. Again, get that out of your system, because next week we're going to throw all of that away and go to strictly orchestral acoustic instruments. So consider that when you're doing all of your different music approach. Got a couple of things here in the chat. Let's see. Edward, for ambient, would I be right in assuming that the music should be more relaxed? Okay, so not relaxed, exactly. I'll explain what I mean more by ambient overall. Should the ambient portion be somewhat suspenseful? Absolutely. It's kind of maybe a little uncomfortable. You know something's out there. You know the robots are going to attack, and you want to build a sense of dread or suspense or danger that's kind of right out there on the edge. So when I say ambient, I certainly don't mean the style or genre of ambient music. Ambient is can be any wide range of instrumentation and style. The main thing that we are listening for in this composition is the difference between ambient and action. So ambient can be loud and strong and have rhythm to it, and it should probably have a little bit of a pulse and a pace to it. But however big and strong the ambient cue is, then the action cue just needs to be that much bigger and stronger and louder and really fast, pushing the pace forward. That's when you're battling with the robots. So the ambient cue should not just be one drone or one pad that just kind of sits there all the way through without any change or movement. You can have pads, you can use synth drones and all that sort of stuff, but don't just make it that one layer. You can have a strong bass and bass line. You can do all sorts of cool things with synths and twisting and getting cool and interesting effects from the low end. Should certainly fill that up. Really builds that sense of suspense. You can have a arpeggiator action going, kind of dancing around there. You can have synth layers kind of moving in and out of the mix. You can even have drums and melody and all of these, certainly a full range of instrumentation for the ambient cue. It's just whatever you put in the ambient cue, the action cues need to be bigger and stronger overall. One thing that I really like to relate for the ambient cues is I like to consider it like musical sound design, where you're using all of your tools in your production, and you're using the DAW and your plugins and synths and all sorts of you can do things like reverse and stutters and delays and distortions and filters and all sorts of fun stuff in there, and have it kind of morph and change over time. I have a video related to this assignment that talks about experimentation and building instruments into Contact and loading a whole series of synths up and routing them all through a chain of effects and then just hitting record and bouncing out a whole bunch of different interesting sounds, and then using those as source material for the composition, especially in the ambient cue. It doesn't have to be a full traditional composition of drums, bass, harmony, melody. It can be, and it should be weird tones and textures, and it can be evolving and fluctuating and morphing over time. So there's just lots of different directions that you can go. A couple of things here in the chat. What is the character background? I don't know beyond just kind of making it up overall. This is kind of like a slice of a much larger game. and there's no story. There's really no reason that this person is coming in and destroying all of the. Maybe it's the poor innocent robots, and he's the bad guy, and he's coming to attack their robot factory, or more than likely the robots are the big mean ones, and they're coming and you're trying to vanquish the enemy there. But it's a person with gun going into robot territory, and the robots are really not too happy about it. They have his baby. Absolute. That's a wonderful reason. I would go in guns blazing against a whole bunch of robots if they took my kids. Heck yeah. Stupid robots. Let's see. Anything could happen at any time in the game. Do you mean that they could have a light, repetitive drum, bongo, percussion thing going on? Yes. Percussion, absolutely. I probably wouldn't have like full drum kit kind of kick, snare, hi-hat kind of pattern going, but think trailer music percussion, where it's big epic drums from different sources, or maybe there's an electronic aspect to it, or it's going to be there's definitely should have a pulse. Maybe that comes from a bass line. Maybe it comes from just low kicks and bass drums. Maybe it comes from a bit of a hi-hat pattern. There should be something, some elements of the ambient cue that is kind of foreshadowing what's coming up in the action cues. So one thing that you want to completely avoid is the action cues should not just be ambient plus drums. Sometimes what I'll get is like one pad that goes through the entire minute-long ambient cue, and then I get over to the action, and it's that exact pad with like a drum kit below it, right? You can use the pads. You certainly have percussion and drums in your action cues, but it should not just be a direct copy, but there should be, like I said, foreshadowing of what's coming up in the action cues from the ambient. There can be a little bit of rhythm and pace to it that will kind of tie into the action cues, working off of half time and double time between ambient and action and between the different action cues will help you kind of maintain rhythm, key, just to keep everything a bit consistent through the different cues. So, ambient, if nothing else is happening, then the ambient cue is playing. So how does the game know how to switch from ambient to action? Action cues happen when you are battling with the enemy, or the battling with the robot. So this is one of the first robots that you encounter. It's called the Buzzer Bot. There are 3 robots overall, and this Buzzer Bot is kind of meant to be annoying, and it flies around you and it zaps you with this kind of lightning bolt thing, right about there. And so the way the game knows what's happening and when to switch the music. So ambient plays for as long as it needs to, and as soon as somebody loses health, either you get zapped, you lose some health, or the one of the robots loses health, then the music immediately switches from ambient to action. Where is this? All right. So you are not guaranteed. Let's do this. You are not going to be. You're not guaranteed when that's going to happen. So at any time, the music will just immediately cut off and switch over to the action music. Now, as the composer, you are not guaranteed that that's going to be in time, in tempo, on beat, or in sync with anything. But it works really well in moving from ambient to action. It's kind of like a jump scare in a horror film, where you know that there's this creepy music going on, and you know something's out there, you know something bad's about to happen, but you don't know when, and it's kind of a lower either lower in frequency, lower in volume, just lower level intensity overall. And then all of a sudden the monster jumps out and everybody gets scared and all hell breaks loose and the music starts pounding away, big drums and big frantic pace overall as the player or the character tries to run away. So it's kind of like your heart rate. Your heart rate, when somebody jumps out and scares you, your heart rate immediately skyrockets up to a faster pace. And so we can do that with the music, where we just hard cut it from one to the next and immediately jump everything up in a higher pace overall. But you can't go back just as quickly, right? If you realize, oh, it's just my friend jumping around the corner and scaring me, your heart rate does not just immediately drop back to what it was. You have to breathe a little bit and calm down and cool down a little bit as it moves back. And in this case, it's going to move back from action to ambient over a period of 3 seconds. So, right, you're hearing ambient music, and as soon as you lose health, zap, right there, the action music, the 8-bar loop, is going to start playing. And it's going to go around and around as long as it needs to before you defeat the enemy. And a lot of times it doesn't take all that long. You might not even hear it all the way through that 8 bars. So, boom, boom, right there. You defeat the enemy, and the music all of a sudden starts fading from the action music back down to ambient over that 3 seconds. Then these are the spider bots, right? These spider bots are on little spider legs. They kind of skitter around. They're like bombs on feet, on legs, where if they get close enough to you, they'll actually self-destruct and try to take you out. So different approach, different kind of part of the music overall. Still needs to be fast and frantic and big, but each robot needs to have its own unique kind of voice to it, whether it is through melody, whether it is through a certain timbre or a certain instrumentation, certain rhythm overall. You can change, rhythm and bass and harmony, melody. And this, again, they should not sound like 3 completely different songs, but you actually can probably change up instrumentation a bit more from one cue to the next, because they're not playing against each other. They're always going back to ambient. So it's moving back and forth. So your ambients have to line up with your actions more than they have to line up with each other. In the chat, is it possible to create music variations so that each time you fight the enemy, the slightly different loop will play each time? So this is definitely an issue well, the short answer is no. Every single time you fight that spider bot, it is going to play the same spider bot loop. So this is where the stingers come in. The stingers are going to be randomly played each time you encounter one of these robots. So whenever one of these spider bots jump on screen, it's going to play randomly one of these 3 different stingers. And it plays right along with it, right? Lines up right there, however close I can get. But, and this provides a little bit of variation, at least in the first few seconds of that cue. The game is set up to only identify one buzzer action cue. It's not set up to use multiple different variations like our previous project. But that is something to be aware of. It's like, well, okay, so every time I see a spider bot, I'm going to hear that spider bot music, which kind of goes along with the idea where you can identify what it is. Even if it's off screen and it pops up and it pops awake, you can still identify what it is before it comes attacking. One thing to point out is when you see multiple robots, it does not repeat. Back up here. Back up. It doesn't repeat it over again, meaning that if you have one spider bot and it starts the music and it's still alive, when that second spider bot pops up, it will continue playing the previous one. It's smart enough to know that, hey, I shouldn't start it over again. It's already playing. Here in the chat, Carmen, so basically the stinger acts as a layered sound. Absolutely. We're going to be talking about layers and how they work overall, but this is our first introduction to it with a kind of a short stinger file. The stingers need to hit really hard in the beginning and then get out of the way, fade to silence, so that they don't really interact or really interrupt the buzzer or whatever, the action cues, all that much. They want to provide a little bit of variation so it's not exactly the same every single time it starts, but you don't want it to get in the way of what's going on in the buzzer action cue. So the stingers, you want to avoid anything strongly rhythmic and strongly tonal. Because you're not guaranteed that this stinger is always going to play with this action cue. This action cue is going to play with one of these three different ones, and this stinger can play with any of the three different action cues. So you're not always guaranteed that the same, if you start on a different note or timbre or rhythm or whatever it is, that it's always going to match up. And you're also not guaranteed, especially on the rhythm side, that they're going to trigger exactly sample accurate in the game for whatever reasons, maybe even down to how quickly the game is running on somebody's computer. That can cause sync issues between multiple files. And that's a concern that can be worked around in lots of modern games, but it's another level of complexity where somebody has to take that into account, and if not, then you're not always guaranteed perfect sync in the game for certain things. Stingers should avoid being tonal to not clash with any of the action cues that they're going to play against, and you want to avoid rhythm issues so that they don't clash with the overall pace that's being set by the action. Here in the chat, Jason, it's like a sound effect that signals a change in the action, but helps cover the quick transitions from the ambient music to the action music. Yes, this is a common thing that DJs will do, where they're moving from one record to the next, and they gotta go from one particular BPM on one record and go to the next. They'll throw a whole bunch of sound effects over and do a transition, or they'll throw it out into a whole bunch of effects, reverbs and delays and drones and whooshes, and then come back into the next beat. Or I've been playing the recent game Tomb Raider. Well, not the, well, of course, there were the classic ones that I played a long time ago, but there's a new series that is really good right now, and Jason Graves did all the music for that, and it's like half weird sound design kind of stuff, and the other half is orchestral. And in that game, one thing I've been really doing is finding games where I can turn down the music and sound effects. And you can do that in Tomb Raider, and I'll just go back and play a section that I've already beat, so I know kind of what's going to happen. I'm not missing out on story or anything. And I'll just turn down the music and sound effects and play it with the music and just listen to how the music switches and changes. And a lot of it is kind of aleatoric weirdness that's more sound design than composition, traditional composition. And everything, when the enemies pop on screen, there's like a hard stinger transition, and then it brings in the big rhythmic action layer. And then I take all the enemies out, and I hit the last one, and it hits a big stinger and does this kind of transition resolve into the end of the action music, and it goes back to that aleatoric weird stuff. And then I enter a doorway or jump through a window or something like that, and I impact, and it hits another stinger, and it just easily hides that, along with all the sound effects and dialogue that's going on in the game. It allows for the music to hide a little bit, where it's like, hey, look over here for just a sec while I switch everything over here and throw out a new piece of music, because it's switching through different wave files. So stingers are there as, sometimes they're like categorized as ornamental, where they're just kind of emphasizing something, or they're there to hide a transition, or they're there to imply an impact, or to provide variation, or so that is the basics. Let's listen to some stuff here. so that we can get a sense of what we're actually talking about. Control Z. All right, we will start here. Actually, I had a good one from last month that I want to also bring in here. Let me do that real quick. 1601. Week 2. This. Yeah. There we go. So all of these, some of them are better than others and just give us things to talk about. Good things and bad things to work on and avoid. And all right, mute this one out. I'll save this and yeah. Oh, I should probably bring back my fader. Make sure that we can all hear this first. Let's see, audio. Let's go out here. All right, let's see if this works. All right. Can you hear this? And can you still hear me? Yeah, okay. I'll turn this down. Okay. Let me let that roll for a little bit. All right, so this is a mixture of a couple of different tones. There's a little bit of a pulse there in the middle. This in the beginning, it's a little too much, little too drony, where it's just like one synth and there's not much happening in the beginning. But once the kind of percussion comes in, that helps a bit with the changes. A few strings in the background. One thing to watch out for is there's a really strong change here. Right here. And all of this is good sounds overall, but you don't want to have a really strong change in the first part and the second part, because you'll kind of know where you are in the loop. You're like, oh, I'm in the weird kind of feedback tones here. And then, oh, it must have looped because now I'm back in the drone part that you hear. And then you know that there's this percussion part. So you probably want more consistency through the loop overall. So you just kind of get lost in it. It does have cool textures, but they could have some more change overall. So again, what we are listening for between ambient and action is a strong change. So here is the buzzer bot. Definitely much stronger. powerful, big drums, big bass. It is a little bit loopy in the first half and second half. And then that part basically plays again. You really want to avoid too much repetition in the first half and second half, because all the game developer would do is just take this and chop it right in half and only use one part of it. Of course, I'd have to make a better loop than that, but you don't really want to waste file size overall by just repeating the same thing over again. You make sure you're using the entire 8 bars. Let's switch over to the mech action cue. Alright, you can hear a similar element to it, but certainly different instrumentation. So each, like I said, each robot needs to have its own kind of voice to it. So the buzzer action is kind of flying around and meant to be a little bit more annoying overall. The action cue is, the mech cue is, it's this guy. Where'd he go? It's the one that looks like from RoboCop. This guy coming down the hallway. So this is, I probably guess, is like one of the boss battles in the game. A little more difficult to defeat, firing big missiles at you. So it should be kind of stronger and heavier overall. And then the spider cue. This one's got a good double time kind of feel that works. Kind of feels like all the legs moving around. And then whenever you defeat it, over 3 seconds, it fades out. It fades back into the ambient cue. So those action cues work well in the overall pacing and intensity, overall tension. And here's 3 stingers. These are not the best stingers overall. The second one here sounds pretty interesting. It's kind of low overall. They should probably all have some big, strong impact or kick at the beginning of them, and then an interesting effect that kind of fades out. What you don't want is just sound effects. This almost sounds like, that's kind of interesting, but you don't want something that is like, I'll hear just like a crash cymbal or a punch or something like that. And you still want it to be musical. You still want it to be related to the overall composition. But each of the 3 of them need to be unique. All right, so this one goes for more epic orchestral. Goes more in that direction. This one is, the percussion is cool. The power, the sound of the instruments work out kind of well, but there's not much change to it overall. Yes, the notes change, but the percussion doesn't change all that much, and there's nothing new introduced. So it feels like it's like a good start, but it could be developed a bit more overall. Here's some of the buzzer. Here's the buzzer action cue. Got the strings and the big drums, but it feels like an arpeggiated string line. It feels like action strings or something. So probably more elements throughout, more layers to kind of build out the complexity of the cue. Starts almost starts sounding very Batman. Like the sound of the instruments works out well, but the repetition and what they're doing is leaves more room. But each one of them has their own kind of voice, similar. It's still the string line and the arpeggiator, but they just move in a different direction, I guess. So these are the types of stingers you want to avoid over here. In that, number one, they just get cut off at the end, and they're kind of fade in over time. They're quieter at the beginning than at the end, and they're actually longer musical phrases, and they would interrupt the playback of the action cue. And I mean, notice that they just get cut off. So watch out for, like I said, rhythmic, tonal, or longer files overall. Let's just do this one down here. Oops. I'm still playing. My mouse. Mute. So this one, it works, it's kind of quieter on the loops overall, or on the beginning and the end. It's got a very Daft Punk kind of Tron feel to it, with your arpeggiated bass, but interesting sounds overall. This stuff there's evolution and development through the cue. There's also a lot of low end, and I don't know how well that transitions into the broadcast. Probably less than optimally, but there's some good low end there. And then here's the action cues. Here is the buzzer action cue. Big epic percussion. Let's go to the mech cue. Again, has a bit of the repetition, that kind of ostinato feel, but you only have 8 bars, so you don't have that much time for repetition. All right. And then, let's see, 3 stingers. These work really well. You certainly don't need this much silence at the end. This could be edited way, way down to like that. Electronic music is very good at these kind of stinger hit transition kind of sounds, where you are either rises or the drops or wherever it occurs in electronic music. A lot of those kind of hit transitions are found. All right. So hopefully this gives you some good direction for Angry Bots. Let me see here. We got the PDF, which kind of lays out what ambient and action is doing for you in the game, how to play, and a couple of reference styles, or reference listening tracks, the choices of instrumentation and style, how the music system works, where it transitions back and forth, transitions from ambient to action immediately, and then fades back over 3 seconds. information on all the different cues, an asset list. Make sure to match the composition match your composition to the genre of the game, right? This goes to matching the overall intensity and the suspense and the tension and the overall feeling that these robots are out to get you and trying to kind of display this in this sort of action level in your music or reflect it. Ambient cue needs to transition to the action immediately. Keep it in the same key and rhythm and instrumentation, and both will help this transition. Doesn't need to be all the same instrumentation, but some cohesive layers will help you get back and forth. Ambient action will happen over 3 seconds after the bot is killed. Stingers are short musical transitions. I think I said most of this stuff. Looping does not mean repetitive. Always want to watch out for repeating too much repetition. All right. Think that basically hits on everything that we needed for Angry Bots. Please let me know if you have any questions about that. We'll move on to your production library track. Let's see, I don't need this anymore. Close that out. So your production library track is in the style of a classic Nintendo soundtrack. We are going to be using the instrumentation or the sound sources, the synthesized sources, and the restrictions of the original Nintendo system. So this week on Thursday, we're going to be doing a bit of game audio history, the history of the audio capabilities of different gaming consoles. So we'll be talking about Nintendo and Super Nintendo and Genesis and Dreamcast and GameCube and PlayStation 2 and 3 and 4 and Xbox 360 and then Xbox One, and all of the audio capabilities of those and what was possible over the different generations and decades of these gaming systems. So to give you a sense of all of this, we got some favorites in here. Nintendo, Super Nintendo, ColecoVision, Sega, always good stuff. So we start back in the mid-'80s and work all the way up to the current generation of Xbox One and PlayStation 4 and the Wii U. Super Nintendo was the best. Metroid, Mario World, Donkey Kong, yes, very good. So we got some classic games out there, and to give you a sense of what it was like to compose for these, at least the musical restrictions, certainly not the technical restrictions, but think of all of the classic soundtracks of these old Nintendo games that are probably still rolling around in your brain, right? Most people could probably hum the first couple of notes to the Super Mario Brothers theme. And all of that music and sound effects were done with 4 basic waveform channels. And there was also a 5th sample channel, which we'll talk about all of that. But we are going to have a restriction of 4 simultaneous voices, basically. 4 simultaneous synthesized voices. And so this comes in the form of a logic session, where you have 4 tracks loaded up. There is an instance of EXS24 sampler on each one of them, and there are provided a series of there are EXS24 sound banks that are set up with some of the original sounds and waveforms from the original Nintendo and the Famicom system. Famicom was basically the Japanese version of Nintendo. Well, I mean, I guess Nintendo is the Japanese version of Nintendo, but it was the version of the Nintendo Entertainment System that was released to the Japanese public before Nintendo came over to the States. Or the Nintendo Entertainment System came over to the States. to be clear on all that. So you are given 4 tracks with 4 EXS24 samplers loaded up with different types of sounds that you can choose to work with. So there are a couple of limitations overall. Let's see here. Production technique. Yes. Now, this is going to be in the form of a linear composition. It's not interactive. It doesn't need to loop or anything like that. It's just a straightforward linear composition that's going to be delivered as an MP3 file. It's going to be somewhere between 1 minute to 2 minutes long. One of the main requirements is that you have to use the EXS24 sound banks that you will are provided with, and no other instrumentation, no real instrumentation. Everything is made up of there were 2 square waves, a sine wave, and a noise channel, white noise channel. White noise was basically all drums, maybe some sound effects. The triangle was often used as the bass line. And then your 2 square waves were, you could actually adjust the size or the duty cycle of the square waves and get different tones and samples out of it. But those were basically like harmony and melody, or often melody and counter melody. So you had no other instrumentation except for what's provided. Limit of 4 tracks. Now you can have 4 simultaneous tracks playing. You can actually have more than 4 tracks, but no more than 4 playing at any one time. That was the limitation. The Nintendo could be switch and play whatever it wanted to, well, whatever it was programmed to play out of those 4 tracks, but you could only have 4 sounds playing simultaneously. But it was constantly switching between multiple different sounds to get the overall effects. There needs to be a melody, so you need to have melodic instrumentation or a melody to drive the overall composition. You are also going to change this lead melodic instrument at some point. You are going to have a 5th track or a 5th voice where the melody switches off to another sound, but you only have 4 out of the 5 playing at any one time. There needs to be percussion, and you'll take a screenshot of everything, and composition and mix any feedback or critique on those aspects. So this one actually ends up being pretty fun and good results. Actually, I think I have a couple maybe I might be able to listen to. Let's see. Edwards, so we can add in another track for the changing of the lead instruments, just to be clear. Absolutely. You create another track, but only 4 of them at any one time are playing. Is it this one? Wow, too loud. This is a fun one. What works for this is the sounds don't sound all that great. You shouldn't probably sustain on them for too long. So faster tempo overall, with more of a staccato approach to the music for your different melodic layers will probably end up giving you the best results. This one's just really, really good, and probably one of the best that I've had. This one? I think it's this one. And this gets to the point of the overall pacing of it. effects up here. So you can hear a lot of movement, you can have basic effects. You can have, keep it to low pass filter, keep it to, I think you can have simple EQ and panning. There's some rules in there that we aren't following directly. Like, you can have chords if you would like to use those. The original system only could play one note on one of those monophonic each voice. So, but we kind of go around that. You can have simple reverbs and delays to help overall, but it's not complete exactly like the original ones, but it gives us the overall feel of some of this. And I get pretty good results overall. There was initially I thought, well, the sounds don't sound all that great, and I could get some bad submissions, and I still do, but it ends up that it takes away all of the production tricks that you get in your DAW, like getting lost in a whole bunch of presets and just working with all sorts of different effects processors and just kind of getting lost there. And it forces you to rely on melody and harmony and developing the actual composition. So, and for the drums here, it is, you can have kick, snares, and hi-hats probably be the best way of going. Again, you could only play one at a time, and so we might cheat it a little bit on that. But Mark here in the chat, look up the old Nintendo game Solstice. Listen to the entire intro song. It was a great composition for a video game in that time. I can imagine it reproduced with better instrumentation today and being a hit song. Probably, yeah. There's some reasons that all of that music really gets stuck in your brain. Number one is that the technology was so limited. Again, they had to rely on strong melody and strong composition, and often were quite catchy, along with the idea that you heard it over and over and over again every single time you turned on the game, and you lost 3 lives and you had to start again, and so that's also how it gets ingrained in your brain. But I'll definitely check it out. And there's I think it's called Retro Game Audio. There's a really good blog out there that explains how they did some of that stuff, and how they pulled off some of the classic sounds that you heard in these games. Jason, it's in the assignment, it says that we can only have 4 channels. Are those already set up in the Logic session? Yes. Yeah, well, 4 channels, and yeah, it depends on what language you're using with channels and tracks. Channels means that you can only have 4 simultaneous voices playing. They can be across multiple different tracks. So, but it does create, or the session by default has 4 tracks in it. So since you are adding and changing the lead voice at some point, then you could have 5 tracks in your session, but you're only using 4 voices or 4 channels simultaneously. That's once you get into channels, voices, and tracks, it often takes some clarification, because certain times it means exactly what it means, and you have to kind of make sure you're using the right terminology, especially if you're talking with folks working on multiple things, and you always have to nail down, are you talking about what I'm talking about? Yeah, I kind of am. Okay, just as long as we get the language down. But a lot of people use them, including me, use them pretty interchangeably when they probably don't mean exactly the same thing. But just something to always clarify, certainly. All right. So, a lot of people have a lot of fun with this one. It gets really good, um, gets some really good results overall, and this often can be a good before picture to the after of a full composition. Um, so, meaning that you can say, okay, here's my composition. You can hear my melody, very well developed in my chiptune composition. So if I have very limited resources, I can still create catchy compositions. But also, I took the same composition and orchestrated it out into full instrumentation and just used no limitations at that point, and just this is what it could be with a whole bunch of resources and um, and technology overall. So it works really well as a demonstration piece. Just here's the one version and another version, depending on what you want for your game. Edward, so it can be as complex as we'd like it then. Absolute. Oh no. Did I lose you? I hope I didn't. Maybe that was just my Wi Fi. Are you still there? Am I still there? No, I'm not there. Hopefully, I will connect. Hello, hello. Microphone check. Maybe it will come back. Check, check, check. Oh, that's good. Hello, hello. Checking, check, check, check. Checking. Connecting. Go ahead and connect. Connecting, connecting. Check, check, check. Come on. Reconnect. Hey, hello. Am I back? Hello. Hello, am I back? Oh, I look like I'm back. Oh, oh, hello? 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 Hey, yay. Sorry about that. I don't know. I think my router just like turned off and back on. What the heck was that all about? That's no good. You know what's very important when running an online class is having internet. And if internet doesn't work, then you can't teach an online class. So I think that happens like not very often. So that should not happen again. I apologize for that. That was very odd. Oh, and if you watch the archive, you can sit there. You can watch me like wonder what's going on and watch me be confused for a minute while I figure out what was happening. Okay. So the last thing that I caught up there with the question was we can make this as complex as possible from the music standpoint. So absolutely. Um, Switching different sounds and making change. I think last month I had a person that had like 10 tracks, but again, only 4 of them were ever playing at any one time. So it works for making strong changes through the composition. All right. Oh, yeah. Okay. So technical assignment. Technical assignment, we'll talk about this in short order because we got to get to the review here. Your technical assignment this week is creating all of the sound effects for 2D platformer. So here is the main PDF, and in here we'll talk about some of this stuff, but there's pictures of each one of the sounds that you'll be creating, and we'll listen to all of these and just kind of go over what they are. But down here, there is an asset list. I believe there are 18 sounds that you will be creating for this game. And let me remind you of how to set up the game and testing out your music and sound effects. Let me bring up the actual game itself. All right, here is your 2D platformer icon. Somewhere. Where'd it go? This one. And the sounds and all of your music can be tested out in the game. Did anybody test out their music from last week in 2D platformer? To do this, you're going to right-click on the application, and you're going to go Show Package Contents. And yeah, it's a really good thing to try it in the game because you get instant feedback of what works and what doesn't work. So when you do, you right-click, you do Show Package Contents, comes up with a folder and appropriately named contents. Go to In Contents, go to Data. Inside of Data, there's a folder called Streaming Assets. And inside of Streaming Assets, you'll find two folders that are very familiar, Music and Sound Effects. And you put your music in here, and the next time you load up and play the game, you will hear your music. This music folder is probably blank for you because I don't provide music in the original game. But your sound effects should all be there. These are the original sounds of the game. And typically what I suggest people do is you create a new session. Like that. And you take all of these sounds and you just drag them in onto a track. Some of them are at a different sample rate, so we'll convert the file. And reference these sounds in the creation of your sounds. Now, of course, don't use these sounds in your sounds. Don't accidentally bounce all of these into your game or into your own files, but use them as a reference to know how long they are and what they sound like, and maybe how loud they are, and just the basic parameters of how the sounds work. Notice all of the sounds are edited right to the front of the file so that they play immediately. And then you would create a couple of tracks below here and then import your sounds and start building out your own. Now, there are a couple of good resources. The Westar Music Library has a whole large sound effects library that you can access. There's also freesound.org, where you can find a whole bunch of it's like a community, what do they call it? Crowdsourced kind of sound library. Freesound is, Westar Music is a professional sound library, so there's a lot of good stuff on there. Freesound.org is the general public, and there are some really good sounds on there. There is a whole bunch of really bad sounds on there that you have to kind of wade through to find the gems. So, but there's all sorts of stuff that you can check out. Edward, should we also try it through Wise and Unity integration outside of class? It is, this direct version of the game is not set up for Wise. You would have to go to the Unity Asset Store and you download 2D Platformer, and there is a version of Wise that is built to work with Unity, and you can start connecting them together and start figuring out how the two communicate back and forth. But they can certainly be used as good tools for all of that, especially since you already know the game and you already have assets and you already have like the whole idea of how it works. the basic 2D platformer, the music system is not set up in the game that you download. We had to build that specifically for these projects. So, but if you want to talk about that sort of stuff and get a head start, we can certainly talk about those aspects. So let's listen to some of these sounds. I'll try not to blow anybody's ears off. Jason, how do we credit any samples we use from freesound.org? For my purposes and for non-commercial reasons, you can search out different Creative Commons levels, like CC 0 means that you can use it for anything with no credit. CC 1 and 2 all have different levels that I always have to go back and read to remember what's what. Typically for non-commercial and especially educational and non-public release, there's probably less need for that. It is when it gets certainly into commercial releases that you need to figure out how to properly credit. Or there's the shady sound designer way of using it as a source and manipulating the heck out of it so that it's your own unique source. But it's hard to do with an explosion, right? Explosions are like, hey, I can run it. I mean, you're not going to run it through much to make it sound that much different than an explosion. So for those types of things, it's much more clear cut. But if it's some abstract thing that you're just going to manipulate and maul anyway, I have different approaches that I use. That's kind of the shady sound designer way, and certainly you want to cover all of your bases because it is one of those that they will can really cause an issue overall. Jason, I only asked because it mentions it in the PDF, so I was seeing if we need to do that for the assignment. Yeah, it's definitely a good approach and a good habit to be logging all of your sound sources. But there's not a particular way set up for the assignment to do that. All right, let's check these ones out. Let's do this here. Okay, let me turn something down here. Turn this down. Okay. These are all the original sounds from the game. There are a couple of different bomb sounds. So what I typically do is identify groups of sounds that work or groups of sounds that I need to search for. Like, oh, I'm going to go find bomb sounds now. And I'm going to find weapon sounds or whatever it is. But a lot of these are vocalizations. And vocalizations are sometimes known as exertions or grunts or whatever, meaning that you can do a lot of them with your voice. So it's not the bomb sounds. Here's a bomb explosion. I think that's ridiculously long, but bomb fuse. That sound is everywhere. That sound is, if you ever play Splinter Cell and he puts down the visor, that's the sound for the visor. It's in the Modern Warfare logo. Common sound. Bomb pickup. Who knows what a bomb pickup sounds like? That doesn't certainly sound like that at all. That's more of an electronic sound, which is perfectly fine. Bomb set down.
Bombs away.
Right? That's just him saying something. So here's enemy death. 3 variations. Really short because you're going to be doing that a whole lot. Gunshot. This is supposed to be a bazooka, right? That's what he's holding in his hands. Does not sound like a bazooka at all to me. But hey, that's what they used. Health pickup. And then all of the rest of these, like I said, are vocalizations that you can do on your own. Jumps.
Huh. Huh. Huh.
Ouch.
Oh. Ow. Ow.
And taunts.
Keep it classy. Bring it on. I say, Bean.
All right. So you don't have to say those exact things. Make up your own taunts. Make it fun and interesting. Please keep it family friendly. No cursing or anything like that. But a lot of these, like I said, can be done on your own, or you search out the rest of the sounds in any number of sources. Then once you get everything done, built and edited, definitely bounce them out. Everything needs to be 16-bit 44.1 stereo to work in the game, and throw the files in here to test them out. All right. Very good. So, different pictures of all the different sounds, and an asset list, and the final delivery of everything. All right. That is all of the assignments for this week. Let's do that. And where was I? I was here. Here. There we go. Okay. So let me know if you have any questions on week 2 assignments. And I will load up. Definitely check out Solstice here. And what was I? Where was I going? Logic. Where did Logic go? Did I close Logic? What am I doing? This right here. Okay. Now, it's 5 o'clock. It's going to take a bit of time to go through all of these. I will go through all of them, but yeah, it's just going to take a moment. Let's see, so we can see all of them here. Endings, 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 endings. Intros, intros, intros. And a whole bunch of main loops. I think we got them generally organized. Oops. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to talk generally about all of them, and just talk about main loop. Talk about what we can see visually from each one of these, and kind of go up and down the list and see if there's anything we can point out to begin with, and then we will actually listen to them, because there's some stuff we can just visually see and things we got to watch out for, and some stuff we really can't understand until we hear it. All right, so the main loops, the things that we are listening for in the main loops are the actually, Jason, you said you're not in the list here. Did you submit to the review, the peer review assignment? Submit there. We had 13 people submit there, so we got to have those available. And the main loops are going to be 8 bars long. They need to loop so that there's no gaps at the beginning or end of that list, or at the end of the file. There needs to be consistent levels all the way through, nothing too loud, nothing too soft, and there needs to be variation from one to the next. So, a couple things. These all look good. This looks like 2 4-bar loops and an 8-bar loop, so they all need to be the same length. This one looks very loud. We got to watch out. Looks like it hits a compressor pretty hard, and limiter pretty hard. There's gaps. This one's not going to loop, so there are gaps at the end of each one of these files. Got to watch out for that. You want to make consistent loops. This might be a little low, but we'll have to listen to it. This one's definitely too low, and there's gaps at the end of each file, so that's going to cause issue. And naming, music underscore main loops. Music underscore main loops. Yes, 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 yes. Cool. All right. So, intros. Intros need to build and create that sense of rise and anticipation. They're each 2 bars long. These look maybe like they're longer than 2 bars. And no gaps. You're going to always want to watch out because it'll play through the intro and then wait a few seconds before it transitions into the main loops. Looks like some of them are similar in levels to their main loops. You want to make sure that the intro cues are consistent, going from the intro into the main loop and then the main loop into the endings. So instrumentation is consistent from one to the next. And then the endings. The endings need to end and stop before getting cut off. It looks like these are going to get cut off. These look like they hit silence beforehand. These look a little bit low overall and might get cut off. These get cut off, get cut off. This one looks good. These two get cut off. This is way too much silence, like that much, unless it's got an insanely long reverb tail. Oh, look, there's actually something over here. Cut off, cut off, cut off. Good. Probably good. Way too low and gaps, and probably good. Maybe a little bit too long a silence, but that should be good. Okay. Again, Mark, did you submit to the review overall? There's a specific assignment to submit for this one. All right, let's do mute and hide. Mute and hide. Control H. All right. First one. I misspelled your name. I apologize. All right. Starting. Got to make sure these are all muted. Man, I've hit play when all of them are playing. Like all of them are unmuted. And I have them all hidden, and I listen. I'm like, why is this one so horrible? It's just distorted, and it's a horrible mess. And then I unhide everything, and I realize that I'm listening to like 25 of them at the same time. Like, oh, that must be my fault. Okay. Boom, boom, and level down. All right. Solid melody. Cool. Melody develops through the cue. There's a little bit of... There's something I'm hearing in the second half of the percussion. That little... Almost sounds like... Is it part of the pattern, or almost sounds like digital distortion, but it's rhythmic. But melody works well. Let's see how it goes from one to the next. Cool. Change. Drums change a little bit. A new line. Kind of playing against the previous one. Everything loops nicely. That works. And we'll go into the third version. All right. So since I hear that second synth, in 2 and 3 makes me want to hear it also in 1. Trying to count the 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4. It's just a snare that's throwing me off. Maybe a little bit more snare through there, but and then I just want to hear that lead synth in here also. Yeah. All right, let's go into intros. They all sound like endings, actually. All right, so they all sound like cadences and resolutions, right? They need to have an upward direction, typically, and don't resolve to the tonic. The tonic really makes you feel like you're hitting that end. Let's see these. Is there... Okay, yeah, make intros build and rise a bit more and don't resolve back to the tonic so that it kind of has that period at the end of the sentence. Typically, hanging on the 4 and or the 5 works well before you drop down on the downbeat, probably starting on the tonic of each one of the main loops. So, yeah, your intros feel too much like endings. Your endings get cut off at the end. So make sure, and this goes for everybody. I say that the endings should be 2 bars and the music should be 2 bars. But if you need a little bit of extra space for that last cymbal crash on your ending, so it doesn't get cut off, you can actually extend this out and bounce beyond the 2 bars just as long as the music ends in 2 bars. All right, so melodically, musically, works very well. The intros are the main things overall, and the main synth should be in the first part of the first one. These shouldn't get cut off. All right, good place to start. Let's try the next one here. All right, main loop. Drums. We got drums in the second half, where we got kick and hi-hat. Lead line almost sounds like a bass synth, probably could be up an octave. And then I'm missing other harmonic instrumentation. I'm missing an actual bass line and harmonic instruments. And drums. I need kick, snare, hi-hat. I need pattern. A bit better overall, but even that melody is this doom, doom, doom. Okay, little change, but probably that element and repetition the first 3, the first 6 bars. Still more drums, much more of a pace. It feels too slow and laid back for shooting aliens. All right, better melody, or at least better instrument for melody. Still, the bass is quite loud. It kind of overshadows the rest of the drums. A bit of that is because there's no snare. You need like that kind of thing, and less repetition from the melody throughout the 8 bars, and more harmonic chord progression. And oops, intros like this. Again, there's a little bit of that fall and resolve, and there doesn't feel like much of a build here. I need like a rise. It almost feels like a 2-bar loop. Actually, 4-bar loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4. Actually, 3-bar loop. 2, 2, 3, 4, 3. Needs to probably drums to help that rise. Needs to move in an upward direction. And it's going back to the tonic. So shorten those up. This one's a little bit better. But they feel very similar. Especially if this one goes do-do-do-do. Yeah, all three of these kind of end the same way. So a bit more development through here, more instrumentation, up the overall tempo and pace, and work on the builds and kind of release from the intros and endings. All right. Mark, I'll save that link there. Hold on. Do this. Do this. Oops. No. Copy. Paste. Don't start playing YouTube. Don't start playing. Okay. Save that one for later. Messed up my file formats for my loops on the composition. I think they bounced them all at 22K16. Nope. 44.1. They probably won't work. Let's see. Okay. I mentioned before the games they do really cool stuff, but they're really quite stupid. At least the software in that they don't know how to obviously make a guess as to what it should actually be. These levels look a little bit low, but you got a little bit more room to boost them up. Music loop. Cool. Good pace, good instrumentation. The end, the phrasing of the end feels like it wanders off a little bit. And plus it stays on one chord. I would like to hear, the melody works, but I'd like to hear the progression move around a bit more. Oh, new chord. There we go. One. 4 or 5. 1. Almost 5. 1. Yeah, move that progression around a little bit more. It would also help the melody, while it works with the pace and the kind of a bounce to it, needs to kind of be phrased a little bit clearer. And it kind of feels like wandering around on the scale. So the drums feel pretty much the same through each one, so it could have more variation there. It's basically the melody works pretty well more in the first half than the second half, but there's not very much change from the drums and progression to give that melody something to bounce off of. Let's try some intros here. Especially with the drums, they don't really feel like they rise up too much. It almost feels like a 2-bar loop. I could just sit there for a while. I need like boom, like some sort of kind of build up from the instrumentation, melody. I mean, just an upward movement in the progression and scale was a good way to start. Endings. I'm missing kind of the last hit. I need just hit one last chord at the very end and sustain it out a little bit. Bomb. And some of that is just there's a little beat or two at the end that gets also cut off. Oh, am I scrubbing? Oh no, streaming lag. Well, one thing is, especially on your own, if you want, the archive is going to have a better resolution of everything. It's a full resolution capture, so not only just the video lag, but the audio will be a much better capture of everything. But that's frustrating. I've never really had this issue with any sort of lagging on my end. I'm going to call my cable company. Okay, more rise from the intros and more chord progression to kind of support the lead line. Find this, do this, and try the next one. Okay, this one's looks like 8 bars and 4 bars. Yes, this is the 22K because it comes out and bounced in or imported at 44. Try this. Cool. We got all right. There's most of what I'm hearing is the mix. Everything feels kind of buried in reverb, and the lead line needs to come forward much more. But the composition works really well. Drums work. Even drums feel kind of far back. Feels like I'm kind of down the hall and around the corner from everything, so it could be much more present. But melodically and harmonically, progression-wise, it works well. These, let's see what these are. Cool. You can hear that the progression. Wait, let's do this. Let's listen to these as one. Yeah, I'd say the main thing to work on is the mix. It almost sounds like, was there a reverb that was shared with multiple instruments, where it feels like things like I'm missing more of the dry signal and I'm hearing a lot of the wet signal from the reverb. That's mainly, I'm losing the impact of the percussion. Certainly was that a marimba or a xylophone playing as the lead. That comes through because it's got a stronger attack. But again, the progression where you're going with everything definitely works. Let's move on. Oh, I wanted to check the drums here. Yeah, drums sound like a similar pattern all the way through. So drum rhythm pattern could change up a little bit from one to the next. But that typically, if your melody is strong enough, the melody is really what drives the change and the evolution through the cue. Same sort of thing here. 2 bars and 1 bar. Perfect. missing the second half. Let me see. Is it this? Oh, look at that. Is that me? Is that the way you imported logic? Because it's all 22K. Oh, look at that stupid logic. What are you doing to me? Let's try this. Now I have to say, that's very weird, because why would Logic randomly choose to shorten 2 files out of the 3 and then do it differently over here? It's like, what's going on? Why are you making these decisions for me, Logic? Literally, all I did was drag and drop it in there. So, whatever. Okay. Better. Even better. Even better with the extension and the second 4 bars. Cool. And then let's do some intros. No. Intros. Cool. Excellent. And just check this. Feels like these are kind of like the second or the last bar. No, it's just this one, which is fine because that's cool. I like that. Okay, and what you have there not only is solid melodic development, but good rhythmic changes going from quarter notes to eighth notes to 16ths and whatnot. Same thing here, Logic. You're making a liar out of me. Thank you, Logic. At least you did it equally to all 3 of them. Okay, here we go. Cool. Good. Very good. Each one of them does the same thing or ends in the same place, but it gets there in a slightly different way. Very, very good. So, again, now that we have the second half of all of those, composition works out well. Very little complaints there. I'd say just mix mostly. Pull it out of the reverb is mostly where we were at. Mark, he must have highlighted a region while bouncing that changed the loop region length. The region that was maybe not the full length. Interesting. Well, we'll know it if it happens again. Does that on anybody else's? Okay. Continuing on. Mute, hide, go. Main loop. Okay, good start, but everything feels very right heavy. You can see it even in the bounces. This side, it feels like that horn is more panned to the right than in the middle. Since it's the lead solo instrument, it should be more in the middle, and watch out for anything kind of panned hard, not even hard left or hard right, but anything that's the focus kind of pushed off to the left or the right, because you are not guaranteed that everybody's going to be listening in stereo. So you want to make sure that they don't miss half the mix. Is this 4 bars? 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2. Yes, 4 bars. So they need to be 8 bars overall. And but the melody, That needs to change up through the cue. It does change in the fourth bar, but you basically state it three times before moving it off to on the fourth time. I do like that little bend at the end, though. That's cool. A portamento there, too. I like the call and the response, but the instrument that is the response is a little harder to hear. Maybe it's that could be because the horn is so present that it needs to be match it a little bit more. But I definitely like the portamento, the slides. And you're right, it is catchy. This one, maybe a little bit too much bend. Gets a little dissonant. But I like the groove overall, and it could just be developed out in the second half to make sure that, number one, it doesn't repeat within the 4 bars, and then doesn't repeat again in the 8 bars. Intros? Again, it feels like 2 bars, 2-bar loops. Really needs more of a rise. Or it's also 1 bar instead of 2 bars. 2, 3, 4. So, a little bit more extended out. Like the horn moves around, but the rest of the instrumentation, the drums and harmony especially, don't really feel like they're building up. Drums could be a snare roll instead of just extending the 2-bar pattern. And endings. I like that one. Except for they're getting cut off. So if you just kind of extended it out, use that extra, it's not hiding anything, is it? Extending and catching that last cymbal crash all the way to the end to give everything enough time to end, you should be good. Dun, 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 bum, bum. That almost has like the bone wah kind of sound for like you just lost on Price is Right or something, but makes you feel like you lost that wah wah wah. Cool. All right. Good. So a couple of tweaks there. Definitely use the overall groove, the instrumentation, just a little bit more development through. All right, this one concerns me a bit. I'm going to turn this down. A little, or very much 2x4. You can see that it either is not clipping, but it's hitting up against that limiter nice and solidly. There's really not much dynamics. It depends on this overall style, but let's see what we get. Cool. So I definitely like it's got that I don't know, tremolo, portamento kind of lead line, almost theremin kind of sound to it. Again, yeah, dynamics. This is just pegging up at -0.1. Is feels like you turned on a limiter and set it to -0.1, and then turned down the threshold way a lot. But musically it works. I can hear the lead, but I can't really make out much. Well, the drums are kind of, there's not much, and there's that other short kind of staccato sound, but feels like it's right in front of my face, and there's not much movement or dynamics to the mix. So cool. It's got that first half, second half kind of thing, except for you change things in the last. Actually, not even that one didn't change so much. Changing things in like the first 6 bars are the same, but bars 7 and 8 change up. You want to make sure that it develops all the way through the cue. But the lead definitely works. That's the best part. But I also think I hear other instrumentation in there, but it's really hard to make out in the mix. And the drums. Let's see, the drums are similar. Similar, but maybe some different turnarounds there. Intros. Good. The drums feel the same every single time. The second bar is da-da, da-da, bum, ba-da-dum. So a little bit more variation from the drums, but it does have a bit of that build, but you don't really get a sense of like, oh no, here it comes, because everything's very much the same level all the way through. So definitely works in the Mars Attacks kind of vibe to it. This sounds like one of the intros. It's probably because that drum roll there. You don't want to end just by fading. And you don't want to have them cut off, so it needs to have and just end on that last beat and give it some time to fade out. So overall, compositionally works. Definitely like that lead sound, and work it a little bit on the repetition, a little bit more on the variation from one to the next, and a little bit more build from the intros, and make sure the endings end, and just hit and resolve. All right. Good stuff. The thing that I always like is that everybody has, I mean, it's the same. Everybody has to make 9 files, and it's 2 bars, and there's intros and endings, and but the results are quite varied overall, and everybody's got good ideas and things to watch out for, and it's helpful on all fronts, right? You hear stuff, and people do things that you would never even have thought of or considered, and you get to see what works and what doesn't work, and like spider in my head. Goodness me. Don't do that to me. Main loops, gaps. That's going to cause the most problems. It's not just going to work properly. Okay, main loop. Cool. Except for that click. Not me. I like the groove. Boom. Stop. again. First half and second half feel really kind of similar. There might be slight changes in there, but you have such a cool, fun groove going on there that the second half could use a little bit more change. No metronome. I hear the metronome clicking away in there. Always got to make sure that you get rid of that before you bounce and deliver to the client. And gaps. Fiddle and banjo work very well. Got that train beat behind it. So this is mostly about formatting. This one feels louder than the others. That sounds similar to this one. There's some other notes in there. Feels kind of similar. So maybe just take the vibe that you have, which is really cool, and just vary that melody a bit more from one to the next. Probably also is the drums are similar, and the rest of the harmonic instrumentation. Although I don't know how much you could change that beat and not totally not mess it up, but totally change it. And you can drop things in and out. Intros and endings. Wow, perfect. But you shouldn't do it every single time. Change it. Go. So, good ideas, but yeah, just some tweaks overall. Endings. Oh, cool. Just don't go don't at the end of the next one. It's close, but enough change there. Cool. Maybe just don't do dun 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 every single time. So more variation and really just slight variations from the ideas that you have, and then formatting. No clicks, no metronomes. That's going to have problems for the clients very, very quickly. And no matter how awesome and fun the music is, that will get in the way too much. All right, good ideas. Keep moving on here. And where was I? Here. Main loop. They don't have much of a melody. I have a groove. I have drums, bass, and keys. So I need a melody. Go use that theremin kind of sound, the spacey kind of vibe from one of those that we heard on the other ones. Good grooves. I mean, I hear the click though. Bink, bonk, 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 bink, bonk, bonk, bonk. Get rid of the metronome. Yeah, I'm just missing melodies. Feels a little clubby, like poppy, but with the melody, get away with it. I mean, it's got that 808 kind of kick feel. Intros. Okay, I mean, yeah, without the rest of the instrumentation, it basically feels like a drum beat, but even this doesn't really have... there's some melodic instrumentation in there, but it's mostly drums. endings. Ooh, a little dissonant. You know what that feels like is a synth that's already got an interval on each key, like it's like a seventh or which. So when you move it around or then play chords with it that then have intervals, then you get some clashing notes. So work definitely on melody and harmony to really. This is a good start and bass layer, but definitely needs more, well, not rhythmic variation, but more melodic and harmonic variation between them. Yeah, I mean, the intros feel like intros, endings feel like endings. But the choice of instrumentation and the amount of instrumentation needs to change. And metronome. Metronome, metronome, metronome. Always turn it off. Whenever I hear a metronome, it typically makes me think that the individual didn't listen to it after they bounced it. Or else, unless they're just totally used to hearing it on all the time, they might not realize that it's still there. First thing I notice is, that I closed my window. First thing I notice is the levels of these. You want to make sure that you have strong enough levels to compete with the rest of the sounds in the game. And we'll start with main loop. The drums could probably be more traditional kick, snare, hi-hat. But in a basic, I basically feel the drums and the one synth. I need the drums feel like they're too. They need to be more kind of four on the floor pattern. Feel a little too loose overall. I need boom 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 boom, and then just more. I need more instrumentation. Each one of these sounds very similar to each other, or they're just kind of wandering where you don't get enough definition to know. I can't make much of a melody out. I mean, I know there's a synth up there, but I don't know what it's playing or where it's feels very buried in reverb. Let's do some intros. Boom. All right, so more instrumentation and different drums. Yeah, it's hard to tell that they are really resolving to a solid ending there. So needs more development, needs more layers, needs more kind of phrasing. Build your chord progression and then define your melody around the chords and the overall pace that is set with the drums. All right, and next, one thing visually with this one, what happened? Hide. This one looks a bit lower in volume than these two. So, of course, we have to listen to it, but let's take a check to see what we have. Cool. The melody could come forward, that lead horn. Or maybe some of the lower brass could come back a little bit. And move the melody in more places. It feels like first half and the second half need more variation between them, but I definitely like the pace. I like the groove that's established there. feels like not the dynamic range is pushed up against a limiter or some compression a bit too hard. Puts crash cymbals way out front. But I like the horn parts. They just need more change in the first half and second half. Cool. Instrumentation and groove definitely works well. More development and just something in the mix. I'm going to guess it's compression and limiting on the master that just needs to be backed off a little bit. This one feels better in the mix. Now I think that this one's the right level. Yeah, overall level, maybe it's because there's not like crashes. These crashes. Crashes a little bit too much in the main loop 2, but main loop 1 is probably your better reference for levels and mix overall. But I definitely like the groove and the feel to that one. For some reason, it makes me think of like GoldenEye or something, playing some action loops in GoldenEye. And it's probably the brass. Okay. Cool. Cool. Good. I like these two because there's a little bit more going on in the first bar. This one is like horn, horn, drums, 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 which is probably, I don't know, maybe a little bit more in this first bar. This has the drums, even in more limited fashion, rocking all the way through, even if it's just that hi-hat in the first part. Kick, kick, drums, drums. Cool. Definitely has that intro kind of feel. And endings. Let's see here. Cool. I like this one. I like the second two more than the first one. Cool. Third one's probably the best. What is it about the first one here? Is it just because I think it's like the last one is just a note from one horn. It almost has got that wrong feel. Like, you screwed up. So is it missing the, I think it's missing the strings. Yeah, it's either more strings or more brass in that first one. But having a wrong note in the endings works well sometimes, or like an off interval, because it's, you screwed up, you lost all your health points, or you fell off into the toxic sludge, or whatever it is. It definitely works to have that kind of feeling in the music. All right, good grooves, good instrumentation, a little bit change in the mix, and first half, second half through the loop. Excellent, excellent. How we doing? 3 more. All right. Rockin' and rollin'. And main loop. I like the winds. Probably need more consistent drums. Like, you can still have those hits, but like whether it's a marching snare or whether it's a shaker or, I don't know, hi-hat. But the flutes and the winds kind of work well together. Now, and this one probably needs to, since it's so focused on the progression, probably needs to move the progression in a different place than the main loops. And I don't feel like I have the same. I do have a similar wind line. Avoid the that's fine, but change it up because it's the same as over here. You get that do kind of feel. And it's just a little bit of the rhythm of it and adjusting the melody, or the movement of it. See? Like even a kick drum in there helps to move between. Too much chimes. Well, chimes could come back, and you want to watch out for stopping it here, I think. Things like that different snare will give away when the music starts and loops over again. Including this one had a problem when it looped. Everything kind of cuts off when it restarts and starts over again. So I like what the instrumentation is doing. I like the progression that it builds, more from the melody, and fill in the gaps in between the percussion. Almost closer to like this, but less chimes, and don't change it here at the end. More consistency through. Cool. I wouldn't have the arpeggiated clarinet going back and forth. Change that up a little each time. And is there? Put the low sax in there. Is there a harpsichord? No. What is that? Almost like a harpsichord sound, but that doesn't show up in here. Oh, there it is. But it's more like chords. I would actually use that as a melodic instrument at some point. So, has a pretty, or at least have a better sense of the intro. This one just kind of sits there a little bit, so maybe a little bit more build from that third one. And endings. Whoop. Missing drums. There's the drums. Boom. Cool. Like this one. So, yeah, maintain the instrumentation. If you're doing this all the way through, you can't really cut it off that quickly without resolving it. And the pattern of the endings feel a little bit like they'll be forced when butted up against the main loops. So more consistency from the main loops into the endings, and a bit more build from the intros. Right? So it's like you got some good ideas and parts to work with, and it's just kind of putting them together to make it more consistent through all of them. All right. This one's too low in volume and has gaps at the end, which will cause issues with loops. So let's see what we have here. Good groove. A little bit more change in the first bat, and like the lead really feels like it comes from the arpeggiator more than the actual melodic line. So I could have another lead, probably a lead synth that sustains to build the main melody. Let's try the next one. Feels too much based off of drum machine arpeggiator kind of build. I hear kick snare. I guess there's a bass down there, but it's way low, hard to hear. Oh, I like this groove. It's got that, is it a one, got a 1, 6, 4, 5 in each one. 1, 5, 4, 5. No, 1, 6, 4, 5. 1. Yeah, it feels like a 1, 6, 4, 5 in each one of them. So that could change up in the progression. Yeah, a bit more of sustained lead synth through those, less based off the arpeggiator, and it's that kind of staccato feeling overall. Intros. Oops. What's that? Realized that I didn't add the extra length to my bounces. Okay. Intros. Okay. A little bit more from, got the drum build in there, but needs more from the melodic and harmonic instrumentation. I mean, these kind of starting to feel like 2-bar loops. They need to have more of a build. Kind of, again, hang on that 4 or 5 before dropping back to the tonic on the main loops. Work better. Probably don't want each one to end in that delay. Almost feels like it's just getting stopped and cut off, as opposed to resolving. You need that final hit or crash or last chord to kind of wrap everything up nicely. All right, the main things are going to be levels and gaps. Those are going to cause issues again, and then work on the phrasing and adding another lead instrument to the main loops and use it through all of them. All right, last one here, home stretch. Let's try again. This, again, a little bit low in level. You got quite a bit of headroom here. At least, come on, your peaks are somewhere around here. Your main level's somewhere in here, your RMS or average level. So you still have quite a bit of room to boost up all of that, certainly without clipping or going over. It's that fine eye of the needle that you're trying to hit in mixing. Let's see, down. The main thing that I'm hearing is that the harmony instrument synth and the lead instrument sound the same, like it's just one octave down or an octave higher up, and so they kind of mask each other a little bit too much. So different instrument layers would help. The melody needs to come forward. It kind of gets hidden in the arpeggio synth lines. Watch the progression. Progression, drums, bass feels too similar from one to the next. Well, There's some inversions in there. All right, intros. Feels too different in the main loops. Probably needs more drums from the start. I think it's because that synth, which is so much the focus of the main loop, kind of comes in the second half of the intros. I mean, it's got a bit of a melodic build there. Let's try the endings. Good. Just fine. Works. Cool. All right. So the endings work just fine. They end, they fade out. Everything needs more level. The intros need more drums and more, well, the rises from the main from the lead line, but it needs more of probably instrumentation or percussion all the way through. And then, yeah, change the harmonic instrumentation versus the lead instrument. All right, so as we can see, lots of good stuff, lots of different things to talk about, things to try and things to avoid and things that you've never even considered. So great result, great turnout. Definitely take the opportunity each week. Hopefully you see this and you say, oh, that's cool. I should probably do that. So, and we'll take some time to check it all out. So thank you very much. We're going to wrap it up there, and I will see you again on Thursday. All right. Have a good evening. Thanks.